Today's topic is the Agile ecosystems in a brave new world, and presenting, I'm going to be here to help Eric Landis. He'll be taking us through the major part of our content, and myself, Andrea Floyd, who works, both of us work at AgileThought. Eric is a senior DevOps consultant and myself as a transformation consultant. So I'll be in a supporting role throughout this, but I'll get us to the meat of the program. Just for FYI, we record these sessions so that we can share them with people who are able to join. We send it out as part of the end takeaway from this program, and we also make it available by posting it out on the AgileThought site. So just FYI, it will be recording. So many of us may have seen this slide previously, but it really is a nice refresher. AgileThought is in 6 different countries. We were formed back in 2000, and we have over 3,000 consultants today, and you can see where we're located. And so the one thing that we know about is working in a remote world and finding ways to connect and collaborate with our colleagues across the globe. So this COVID-19 has taken it to a next step, but it's something we're definitely familiar with in our day-to-day lives. Our practices, our AgileThought really covers the full spectrum of services. We can engage with you around any Agile transformations or business transformations, and then we have a large portion of our practice that's there to partner in building solutions and delivering value. So we have a build practice, and then we have a run practice. So for organizations who need somebody to just pick up and run support for their solutions, we're here to catch that ball as well. So sort of a one-stop shopping. So today's talk is part of the virtual community, and we start off with what we call forum discussion, and that's what we're doing today. And it sort of sets the stage for a broad level of conversations that may splinter off from this that are called practice talks. And practice talks are typically where we go a little bit deeper and we do some walkthrough in terms of hopefully giving people some takeaways on new techniques that they can leverage with their own Agile teams. So today will be a forum talk. What we're going to do here is we're going to, the flow of the conversation that Eric's going to guide us through is we're going to take a look back and refresh our memories on the Agile principles. And then we're going to have a conversation about what principles are at risk now that we're in this brave new world. And then the next topic we'll flow into is how does opening up the economy change the world? There's a lot of thoughts going on as many of us are facing going back to work or going back out into our environments with the opening of the country.
Agile in a more remote world, or a brave new world, as the title of this talk is. So really in this forum, we want to go to talk about how, as things continue to change, how that affects Agile. So one thing I wanted to review is the 12 Agile principles with an eye towards, are any of these at risk with kind of the changes we've seen in the last couple of months? We'll do some exercises together around that, but real quick, run through. I don't need to read all of them, a couple of them. The idea here is we really want the Agile principles to talk about those. So for instance, let's talk about a couple that I've thought about over time. Business people and developers, number 4. Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. I think that's a good one. The other one, most efficient and effective method of conveying information is with a face-to-face conversation. Others, I'm interested, working software, primary measure of progress. Those are all very important to me, not that any of them are not, but those are some that I think are very, to me, I really refer to them a lot. So during this time, I'm wondering what principles are at risk. So during this time of being remote, you know, what principles are at risk? Well, one that's really obvious to me, most glaring, is the one I just mentioned: the efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. So I look at that and say, hey, I think this probably affected a lot of teams as they went from being on-prem to remote. So with that example, what I wanted to do is kind of give us a few minutes and what other principles do you see at risk? So we want you to think about that, put those in the chat window, and you can refer to them by number or write them out if you want to. But name 2 that you've seen at risk with your teams, and and then afterwards we'll talk about what you are doing to change that. So I'll put the principles up here, and I'll give you 2 minutes to really put those in the chat window. All right, I just seen some I hadn't thought of. So let's wrap up. I'm going up the chat here. Dang, like everything, pretty much. People are finding at risk. So the one that I think, Jim, you mentioned something first that I hadn't thought about. The self-organizing and architecture, number 11. Would you mind speaking to that? Like, why is that at risk in remotely?
I guess the teams I work with were distributed to begin with, but within the corporate office, there are a little bit better tools than people have at home on their laptops. I think part of the problem is bandwidth, like we had in Zoom.
Yeah.
A lot of people, or a lot of the architects, used to get with a team and they would come up with a design together. But now the architects have other distractions that prevent them from necessarily wanting to guide teams to self-organize and come up with better architecture. I've seen more prescriptions. I think part of the problem is one of the architects that we work with has kids at home. And he and his wife works also, so they're both working at home, and they kind of take turns with, you know, the parental duty and so forth. And so sometimes when things pop up, it's easier for him and quicker for him to just say, do it like this, rather than here's some different ways to look at and let's draw some things out on a board. In other cases, the architects, I do have some people located on site. You get in a big room and you whiteboard designs. Sorry about my coworkers. They're protecting the house. And sometimes get in a room that has a camera and the whiteboard is big enough for them to whiteboard stuff out. And if they only have a laptop at home, it's very difficult for them to get everything on their screen without something failing. And so it's a little bit more difficult. That's the principle, or that's the thoughts behind that principle and why it's endangered.
So that's interesting, because I think that goes to what MC Moore posted in here, saying, MC said the pandemic has caused people to stop thinking in an agile way. And
it's become more reactive rather than thinking about it.
Right. Some interesting stuff. What jumped out at anybody else? Did anything posted here in the chat window? Was that surprising to anybody?
I was curious, MC, if you could maybe expand a little bit on what stop thinking in an agile way might look like. What would be an example?
Ooh, boy, thanks, Dan.
Sorry to put you on the spot there, but I was interested.
You didn't put me on the spot. No, not at all. It's just there's a lot to unpack there.
We'll take the Cliff Notes version.
No. It's I work for a large hospitality company, so we especially impacted, and that's what's caused. So there's a lot of concern and angst, and that's what's people are kind of setting aside their thought and rationality and reason and are doing stuff. And it's like, oh man. And so some of the things that we talked about, and it's really, I'm glad you guys brought up the slide. I'm gonna share this back. I'm a Scrum Master. I'm gonna share it with my team and have us talk about it at a lower level.
Nice.
But that's really, it's the pandemic has just put people in an uncomfortable place, and they're doing or saying things that they normally wouldn't.
Oh, that's great stuff. So we'll maybe
on one, it's Ursula's number 5, and you're talking about some of the challenges your team's facing in terms of staying motivated without that face-to-face. Can you share a little bit more about that?
And I think it's in general the feeling that people have, not necessarily related to work so much as just the anxiety that this whole situation is causing, especially for people that might not live with family. Like I had in my team, a lot of people that were basically living by themselves. So they don't have anybody to interact with. And it's incredible. Human interaction is necessary and face-to-face, and that they do get together on web meetings and daily scrums and design sessions and that kind of stuff, but still there's nobody at home. So that's causing them to just, the morale goes down, and it's kind of like hard to stay up with that. And I think some of the things that we were doing were, having like happy hours on Fridays, things that are outside of work, and just checking on people to make sure that they're doing well. But it's tough.
That's a great solution, really, is coming up with things like happy hours and things outside of work. And really a lot of the issues we're talking about, I think relate to, you have to be more intentional about your contacts when you're remote, as opposed to, hey, we just bump into each other at work, and it's real easy to keep community going in that way. So does anybody have other ways? Because a common theme to me seems, we're kind of losing our focus a little bit, and it's understandable. What other ways have people used to kind of combat that remote work? The feeling of, kind of loss of community, if you will. All right, great. Seen a lot of good stuff in here. Keep video on. Dan mentioned it even in your meetings, so I love that. I've seen that with teams. We're with a team on site, and we have 1 or 2 remote people, and the videos aren't on, and that I would love to see that change and that not be the norm, right? I don't know, Dan, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
I think one of the challenges when some folks are physically in the office is that a lot of the conversations happens more organically there, and it can be much more challenging to be inclusive of folks that are remote. It takes a little bit more intentionality, I think. So it's a balance.
Yeah. Ursula mentioned walking meetings.
Well, I find myself that now that I'm working from home, when I have a meeting or I want to talk to somebody and I don't need to share my screen, I just go out and walk.
Huh?
And I know people at work are also doing that when they hear me say that. So I think it will be something that it's kind of harder to do when you're in the office.
Yeah.
But trying to be a little bit more intentional about doing that, I think is good. I sometimes think better when I'm walking. So.
Cool. So MC Moore has very little, you mentioned very little change. You're already doing a lot of these things, huh?
Just because, I mean, I consider myself pretty fortunate in that regard. because of the fact that our developers, testers are all offshore, and we had instituted changes a long time ago. I mean, up to and including we use that lowest common denominator factor. So, for example, even the onshore folks, when we're on our various ceremonies and such, everyone is on webcam. We don't collect together in a room and jump on a webcam as a group. It really helps to level the playing field. So little things like that. So there really wasn't a hard shift. I've had to deal with more personal items dealing with working remotely full time, but the work side of things, that people have just kept doing what they normally did.
Yeah, nice. And anything else anyone wants to share before we move on?
I was just going to say, Federico mentioned something similar, I think, to what MC change allowed extensive hybrid on-site remote policies. Is there some additional thoughts you had about that, Federico?
I suppose that it's hard to believe in a concept of a future normal. No, I'm not sure that we'll easily can identify in the future some normal. So we'll have different scenarios, different ways to do things, and adaptation will be in any case following Darwin the main ability to remain relevant. And each company, I assume, that has to be very, very open in these different future scenarios, and the on-site, off-site work from home thing has to be, in my opinion, in a very extensive, the meaning is for everyone, has to be the chance to create, to position himself or herself in one component of a continuum, from a totally distributed concept, and now we are experiencing the most extreme concept of distribution, a distribution one by one in our homes, to people that want and used to go to a specific physical location every day. So in that continuum, I think that companies have to be very open and to create engagement with their clients that enable that whole spectrum of possibilities.
Yeah, that's great. A great point. I think, my belief is we're kind of stuck with that hybrid model, and stuck maybe isn't the right word. It's going to be that model is going to continue, right? That's what I'm thinking for a while, and maybe that is going to be normal, right? Maybe we will just have that hybrid model. So great stuff. So before we get to our final activity, which I think is going to be great and fun, I wanted to talk a little bit about, we talk about agile organizations, and that's our brave new world. I like to emphasize that agile organizations are continuously learning. And here are kind of some signs that we would talk about when we talk about how is an agile organization poised to be continuously learning. Things like having communities of practice, an agile leadership team, having a psychological safety that encourages experimentation. So, if we fail at something, but we learn from it, we're not penalized by that. So those are some things. Are there other ways you're instituting Agile in your organizations that to kind of make sure it continues, that we're continuously learning? Okay, so sounds like we captured it all. That's awesome. So as we go here, let's, and we've kind of talked about this, but we're going to use Mural on this, and Andres shared the link to Mural. So we want to go in there. There's really 3 lanes, or 3 columns, if you will. One is challenges, and that's what we're going to work on in the first section. So feel free to go to that link, maybe get a little familiar with Mural if you're not. We want to add sticky notes to the challenge section. Basically, what is your challenge what's your main challenge as this world starts opening up that you see to being an Agile organization? So here's a couple that look very similar to me. Office space to keep social distance. What about the common coffee area? Is this similar? Whoever posted this to that?
I think so. The
Yeah, I
amount of
think so.
touching of the coffee pot that goes on. Yeah.
Yeah, just use Lysol. Terrible. That was terrible. Fear of the unknown, COVID-19 mutation. Oh man. Yeah, I don't know. That's very similar. Planning for how things will change as things reopen. I feel like that's a little broader, but similar to these. Like we're gonna have to keep social distance. What does that mean, reopen? So uncertainty. So uncertainty is a very big, big topic, right? Feeling like we lose more of the day due to commutes. Yeah. What's an EQ? Emotional quotient?
Yeah, no, it's just emotional intelligence. And so it's like the ability to like relate to others. If everyone's kind of like home, you kind of lose some of that.
Yeah. All right, great. So we've got fear of the unknown. We've got this one, which is really what's going to happen when we open. You know, what are the rules? So the challenge, I would really say these. What are the rules when we start reopening? And then, so what I'd like to do, and I'm just arbitrarily picking them, is focus on really 2 of these. And I want to take one that's maybe not as huge of an issue, and take this one. So if we can, I'm going to move these out of the way, the EQ and fear of the unknown. And if we can just concentrate on managing distractions that come with the office. Is that related to any of these? Or just wondering if somebody put that up there. Yeah, that's not really related to others. So it
looked like, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so what I'd like to do is look at these as one, the office space, social distance, common area. That's really how do we operate? What's the challenge? There's a challenge with operating on-prem. And then this feeling we lose more of the day due to commutes, this is a challenge. So how do we address those? So the next part of this, and let me minimize this one. And the next part is let's look at those 2 challenges. Take 5 minutes. Do we have 5 minutes, Andrea? Maybe it's 3 minutes.
Yeah, you have a total of like 9 minutes remaining. So
yeah, so let's take 3 minutes to add an ideal outcome from that for you, and then maybe an activity you're going to take to achieve them, so that we can kind of see what's a blueprint for us to attack those. Feel free to take either the planning for as what the logistics are, or you know, the commute. We're going to have this commute time now going back to the office. How do we deal with that when we're not used to it? So I'm going to put this up here. So put some outcomes and activities in there, and I'm assuming your activities will relate to your outcome. Will drive your outcome. Yep. So let's wrap that up, and real quick, want to go through, maybe let's take one of these on the outcomes. Stagger when employees will come into the office for the commute. I'm assuming, is it whoever wrote that?
It could be for the commute or the coffee. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is the outcome is employees have a schedule to come in office, basically, or that's how you measured it. And so to me, that makes a lot of sense. Is that something you weren't doing before? I'm just curious.
No, not at all. Part of our flex policy is people can designate a day that they will be out of the office, but this is kind of the converse.
Yeah. So that's definitely different. So just wanted to thank you for your participation. Feel free. Our emails are here on the slide. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.